Okay, I think we can get started. Good afternoon. We're going to start with just the general disclaimer for this presentation. The information within this presentation is slated to facilitate discussions on various existing and potential regulatory mechanisms. No final decision regarding this information is expressed or implied by the department. Next slide. On behalf of NJDEP and the Site Remediation and Waste Management Program, my name is Judith Andraco. I'm the regulatory officer for the program, and I'd like to welcome you to the NJDEP Stakeholders Meeting Series, the first in a series, regarding PL 2020-C117, an act concerning single-use plastic bag ban, polystyrene foam food service product ban, and single-use plastic straws by request only. I am your moderator for today's presentation. We ask that you please keep your mics muted throughout the presentation and that you only use the chat function if you are experiencing technical issues. For example, if you don't have video, if you don't have audio, if you're having problems hearing someone, please keep your chat function limited to those types of technical issues. We have someone on DEP staff that will be monitoring the chat to take care of those technical issues or help you address them as we go along. Next slide. Just an in-house friendly reminder, if you are dialing into the meeting, we ask that you email Katie Greer at katie.greer@njdep.nj.gov. That's katie.greer@dep.nj.gov, because when you're dialed in, we are unable to identify that you are the attendee. There's not the availability of having identifying language. We just get the phone number. So we'd like to make sure that our attendance sheet is most up to date and correct. So we ask that you please email to let us know that you attended. And let's go to the next slide. Let's talk logistics for MS Teams. With the chat function, again, we're asking you to deal with that for technical difficulties only. We found that in the past, if we have some type of a conversation going on in the chat, then people end up losing sight of what's going on in the actual presentation. We ask that you use the raise your hand function when it comes to the points in the presentations where we're going to be asking for comments and questions. Please raise your hand if you would like to provide a response. After the presenter concludes a particular part of a presentation, I'll then select a person to speak based upon when their hand was raised. When you're selected to speak, we ask that you unmute your mic and lower your hand. In the interest of time, a staff member may interject in the discussion with a cue to keep us on schedule, and that will cause us to wrap up the discussion and move on to the next presentation or presentation point. Today, we also want your opinion. We're going to have a question at the end of our meeting today. That poll question will appear in the chat function. So at that point, toward the end of the presentations, we're going to ask you to click on the link that you'll see in the chat function, which will redirect you to a question sheet. At that point, we'd ask that you type your name and affiliation before making your comment, because we want to make sure that we know who you are and with whom you're affiliated, so we have our most accurate attendance record. To ensure accurate notes, we ask that you type in full and complete sentences. You can vote by selecting an option and then clicking Submit Vote at that link. You can change your vote as many times as you like, but only your final choice is recorded, and the poll question will be open for answering for the next 24 hours. Next slide. Today's goals of the meeting are simple. We want to hear from you, our industry experts, our local and community partners, and our regulated community on how to craft our rules. Our experience is that final product is often far superior in the New Jersey Register, the rule proposal, if input is received from individuals with diverse perspectives. As our moderator, I'll provide direction to ensure that all of you that are present have an opportunity to provide input and comment and to keep us on track. Next slide. I'd like to introduce our NJDEP rulemaking team from the Assistant Commissioner's Office. Again, I'm Judith Andraco. From our Bureau of Planning and Licensing, we have Erin Jensen, Julia Rossi, Chris Michaelwitz, Dana Lawson, Seth Hackman, and Jill Aspinwall. From the Bureau of Solid Waste Permitting, we have Katie Greer. And from Compliance and Enforcement, we have Sonia Silcox. Welcome, everybody. At this point in the presentation, I would like to introduce Erin Jensen, who's going to be taking over the presentation from this point. Back to you, Erin.
Thank you, Judy, and welcome everyone to our first stakeholder meeting. So for the agenda for the day, we're going to cover all the material types covered in the law. For single-use bags, we're going to go over the scope of the ban. We're going to talk a little bit about alternatives to those bags and the general impact. For polystyrene foam food service products, we'll again talk about the scope of the ban, alternatives, and waivers. And for the straw by request only rule, we'll talk about definitions and the general impact. So starting on November 4th of this year, the straw portion of the law became effective. What this means is that food service businesses shall only provide a single-use plastic straw to a customer upon request by the customer. Starting May 4th of 2022, the bags and polystyrene foam provisions of the law become effective. For the bags, the law prohibits stores, food service businesses, and grocery stores from selling to or providing their customers with single-use plastic carryout bags. It will also prohibit grocery stores equal to or larger than 2,500 square feet from providing single-use carryout paper bags to customers. Also, beginning May 4th, 2022, there will be a prohibition of polystyrene foam food service products from both food service businesses and individuals. This covers both providing customers with this material and also being able to purchase it in store. That was just a brief overview. So next we're going to just look at a couple of the general definitions that will apply to all of the rest of the discussion today. So in the law, the definition of store is any grocery store, convenience store, liquor store, pharmacy, drugstore, or other retail establishment. For food service business, that would be anyone that sells or provides food for consumption on or off the premises, including establishments such as a restaurant, cafe, delicatessen, coffee shop, convenience store, grocery store, vending truck or cart, food truck, movie theater, or business or institutional cafeteria, including those operated by a government entity. And also, grocery store is a self-service retail establishment that occupies at least 2,500 square feet and sells household foodstuffs for off-site consumption. A grocery store does not include any establishment that handles only prepackaged food that does not require time or temperature controls for food safety. Our first topic of discussion is going to be the single-use carryout bags. To begin, these are some of the definitions from this section. We have a definition for plastic, which means a synthetic material made from linking monomers through a chemical reaction to create an organic polymer chain that can be molded or extruded at high heat in various solid forms, retaining their defined shapes during the life cycle and after disposal. Single-use plastic carryout bag means a carryout bag made of plastic that is not a reusable carryout bag. Same for paper, is a carryout bag made of paper that is not a reusable carryout bag. And the definition for reusable carryout bag is a bag that is made of polypropylene, PET nonwoven fabric, nylon, cloth, hemp product, or other machine washable fabric, has stitched handles, and is designed and manufactured for multiple reuse. The single-use bag provision also includes some exemptions. These include a bag used solely to contain or wrap uncooked meat, fish, or poultry, a bag used solely to package loose items such as fruits, vegetables, nuts, coffee, grains, baked goods, candy, greeting cards, flowers, or small hardware items, a bag used solely to contain live animals such as fish or insects sold in a pet store, a bag used solely to contain food sliced or prepared to order, including soup or hot food, a laundry, dry cleaning, or garment bag, a bag provided by a pharmacy to carry prescription drugs, a newspaper bag, and any similar bag as determined by the department pursuant to rule, regulation, or guidance. And we want to know what ideas are out there as far as alternatives. So this is going to be our first discussion topic for the day. And the question we're going to start with is, what materials are you considering as alternatives to single-use plastic and paper carryout bags? What are some ideas that you have or plan to use beginning May 4th? So again, as Judy has said, if you would like to have any comment or question, just use the raise hand function and Judy will call on you.
Thanks, Erin. First person we're going to hear from today is Mary Ellen Pipard.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Erin. Thanks so much. We have been talking with our members about, in addition to the reusable bags that are currently sort of considered reusable under the law, whether our members might be able to use the plant-based bags. So I know we've had some conversations with Erin and others at DEP about this issue the last couple of months, and I'm not certain that any decisions have been made, but it is something that we do think could be a good alternative as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary Ellen. Anyone else? Okay, in the vein of what materials are you considering as alternatives, let's discuss what other potential alternatives there are. Working in the department, I personally don't know exactly how many different types of bags and carryout bags there are. I mean, I've seen the kind at my local ShopRite. I've seen paper bags at my local Wegmans and plastic bags at Kohl's. I didn't know what are some of the other materials that are out there to use. Let's hear from Jason Wadsworth.
Hi folks, this is Jason from Wegmans Food Markets. I'm the sustainability manager, and one of the things that we have learned and are kind of interpreting is that for our e-commerce business, the only way to be compliant without using paper bags is to provide reusable bags to the e-commerce customer. This would be things like Instacart for groceries. And just my comments here is that we know that putting a reusable bag into e-commerce without a mechanism to accept that bag back for reuse, and that is actually just putting more single-use plastic out into the environment versus a paper bag, which is fully recyclable in curbside systems. So we think that is a step backwards with what we've had to come up with to comply with the law. And we hope that there's some room for discussion in the future about what other bag alternatives there could be to support the e-commerce system. Wegmans is fully committed to reusable bags for our general customers. We have a reuse rate north of 80% as a company, and we're committed to that journey. We just feel like this particular issue with e-commerce isn't quite in the spirit of the law and is an unintended consequence of having to use a reusable bag as a non-reusable bag, if that makes sense. And we'd be open to other folks' comments and concerns around that or other alternative materials.
Thank you, Jason. Very insightful. Oh, next up, let's hear from Linda Doherty. Hi, Linda. How are you today? Linda, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I would like.
There you are. Hi.
Hi. I would like to follow up on what Jason has added to the conversation because my other members, grocery stores, are having the same struggle. When this law was being considered, more than 2 years ago, pre-COVID, it was a very different world, and there was a traditional shopping experience. Customer would come in, the anticipation was to eliminate paper and plastic bags, single-use bags, and move the customer to a reusable bag. And now it's growing, in the explosion of either curbside or, online shopping and home delivery, is that shopping experience has changed dramatically in the past 21 months. So how do we as retailers now, because some of our customers are no longer coming into the grocery store, yet they'll be purchasing these reusable bags. And what they'll do is they won't have the capacity to bring them and use them back to the supermarket for reuse. Yet they'll accumulate at home, just think about how many times you go to the grocery store. It's the same amount of times that people are having their groceries delivered. So a customer now is accumulating and will be accumulating once the law goes into effect, tons of reusable bags. So we're creating even a larger problem. So that's the conundrum that we want to put out there, is that, what are these alternatives to prevent that type of solid waste collection at our customers' homes?
With these reusable bags, now this is just me personally asking this question, just off the cuff. With these reusable bags, would there be not a recycling deposit return? Remember, like how we used to have some, like Coca-Cola bottles, you used to be able to return. This was back in the 70s for a deposit. Would that ever be an option for some of these bags if people are just going to be accumulating them from, say, the e-commerce part? Would they be able to return them to the store and get a deposit back so that they can be reused? Or are there still issues with whether the bags are cleaned? Are there sanitary issues and like the typical COVID issues? Is that something that would be keeping you guys from doing something in that line?
Yeah, I think you'll start to see some innovation in this space where there could be those types of programs, and we're learning about some startups. But again, if the customer is not coming back to the store, right?
Yeah.
They're no longer coming to the supermarket. That's the conundrum. They're not coming back in. So if you do have a third party like an Instacart or a DoorDash, it's always a different driver dropping off the groceries. So they may not be going, and their contracts are with all different food retailers. So they may not be going back to Wegmans, right, to go pick up another order. They're going back to another store, so they're not going to transfer, right, those reusable bags.
Okay.
So that's, again, that's part of the conundrum.
Okay, Linda, thank you so much for your insight. I'd like to move on to Jason Wadsworth.
Just to piggyback on that a little bit, and also, Judith, your jaw dropped when I said 80% reuse rate for Wegmans, and I just wanted to clarify, that is in New York State, where we do have a bag ban in effect. Our reuse rate is north of 80%. So not there in New Jersey yet, but we're committed to that. Just to touch on what Linda's mentioned in your question about recycling. So currently there is no mechanism to recycle these reusable bags that we're aware of. We're working on that, and hopefully we'll have a solution soon. But even with a recycling solution, just think about the bags are manufactured using plastic, a thicker plastic. So if we just go by the principles of reduce, reuse, recycle, we're increasing the amount of material being used compared to a paper bag. And that supply chain from China, which is where these bags are manufactured, in addition. And if they're designed for reuse, they're designed heavier, thicker to meet those strength requirements. So you're actually, if you were just to use it once and recycle it, that becomes more problematic than a paper bag that gets recycled after one use. So just making those comparisons. It's not the right thing. We believe the ultimate solution is that we work with our e-commerce partners to figure out the reuse model for e-commerce. We're just not there yet, to Linda's point. And if there was any reprieve or temporary solutions, such as, I know, the paper bag, that from a sustainability standpoint is better than the reusable bag as a single-use bag, we'd be all for it, but committed to the long-term figuring out the reuse model. Thank you.
Jason, thank you so much. I'd like to move on to John Weber.
Thank you, Judith. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Could you let us know who you're affiliated with, please?
Sure. I'm with the Surfrider Foundation, a coastal environmental group. And I should say that given the legislative schedule today, there are a lot of environmental groups in Trenton today that couldn't be on this call because they're in Trenton today. So
have no fear. This is just the first meeting.
All right, terrific. So to answer your original question, I just want to point out that of the dozens and dozens of towns that passed plastic bag laws before the state, almost every one of those towns made an effort to get, reusable bags, good. They're usually woven polypropylene bags with handles, and distribute them in their towns. So there's, thousands and thousands of those bags out there. And because, since you just asked about the material, I think that's probably the most common sense material that people are going to use, woven polypro or bags. So to address this issue that's being raised about, well, actually the first issue I want to address is the question about bioplastic bags. If they're talking about filmed plastic bags, those should not be allowed. They're no better than regular old plastic bags once they're out in the environment. In the coolness of the ocean, they don't break down. They just act like regular plastic. They might be slightly better on the production end if they're using, vegetable-based material instead of fossil fuels. But once they're made, they're no better than regular old plastic. So let's please not allow bio bags. I have an entire toolkit I can share with you about our Surfrider Foundation's deep dive into the whole bioplastics issue. And in short, we don't allow it. We don't think should be allowed. And so this issue of the nature of the supermarket business has changed. There's more people coming and not coming into the stores, and that dilemma. I think we have to get away from this idea that every single person that comes and picks up their groceries like that needs a branded bag by that supermarket. I think there's alternatives to this. And if the problem, as stated, is people are bringing so many of these home, and they're accumulating them because they never go shopping anymore. They just order online or whatever. There's no shortage of ways people can give those out, okay? Like there's a food pantry in my town in Bradley Beach, New Jersey. They don't give away plastic bags. They tell all of their patrons, and they're serving 750 families a week. They say, you need to bring reusable bags to get your food pantry supplies and take them home. And I think that's the trend in food pantries. They're all going to be moving there. So anyone that's accumulating a closet full of reusable bags from Wegmans or anywhere else, they can give them away, or they can just give them away to, low-income organizations and agencies that serve low-income people. And I want to stress that we don't want to recycle these reusable bags. We want to reuse them. That's what they were made for. And then I like Wegmans, but I always go shop there. But right next to my Wegmans is a liquor store. And guess what? If you're buying more than like 3 bottles of anything, they reuse a cardboard container, and they just put your items in a cardboard box that they were just going to recycle otherwise. And that's how you get them from the counter into your car and take it home, and then you can recycle that box. It seems like a perfectly good solution for the grocery side of the Wegmans business. If they're doing it, on the other side of the wall at the liquor store, I'm sure they could just put groceries in boxes like that and hand boxes to people when they come and pick up their orders. It seems pretty simple to me.
John, thank you for your input. I'd like to bounce back to DEP staff. Do any of you guys, Erin, have any additional response or info to provide regarding any of the comments that we got so far?
Not particularly. A lot of these are things that either we've discussed before with different people or have come up in the past, but there is definitely some good information here. So I really appreciate everyone jumping on and having comments. And we'll definitely make sure to take all this into our process for rule writing.
All right, we're going to go back to comments and questions. Next up is Amanda Stone. Hi, Amanda. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you? Amanda with the New Jersey Restaurant and Hospitality Association. Just first wanted to thank you guys for being on the webinar with us a couple weeks back to educate our members about the right then it was the plastic straw ban and then the upcoming bag ban. Just a quick comment on behalf of obviously the restaurant industry. I know it had been said there could be a possible delay to this, and that's the only thing we're just considering right now is if that is possible, just with the inflation and obviously the supply chain. That's just our concern as our restaurants are already kind of still in the thick of it with COVID and all of that and staffing issues. That's just our comment right now. But we're here to educate our members, so anything we're taking away from this, we will certainly let them know.
Okay, Amanda, thank you so much. Next up is John Hepner. Good afternoon, John.
Hi, you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So I represent, well, partly the restaurant association as well, but mostly the food truck association and in New Jersey. And so obviously there are concerns with this whole thing. I guess the challenge I've got is, when you're with the restaurant, let's start with the restaurant perspective. We do, I would say 50% of our deliveries are DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats. How do we get food out to these guys they walk in our door right now, they take a bag and they leave. And if I can't use plastics, I can't use paper, I just don't know what else to do at this point. I'm really kind of at a loss as to how to, if they carry their own bags. The other problem with that is that we seal our bags to ensure product safety when it goes out. And so if these guys have to carry their own bags, come in, load food into a bag, leave, I have no guarantee of product safety anymore because my products are not sealed because it's their bags. That's the assumption, I'm guessing, that they're going to have to use these reusable bags and go to every location, every storefront that they go into. So that's a concern of mine. Secondarily is the food truck situation where, the expectation, I guess, is that people will now, everybody, and I don't mean some, I mean every single person will be forced to walk around every day, everywhere, carrying a reusable bag of some sort. Because otherwise they come to our food truck, how do I even give them food? I mean, I can give them in a sealed container, but it just, I don't know. I'm just confused about how to do this right now.
And I just want to jump in, and I appreciate your comments. Paper bags are only banned from large grocery stores equal to or larger than 2,500 square feet. All other retail establishments are allowed to use paper bags. So
all right, that's good. That's
the restaurants, the food service businesses, they'll be banned from the single-use plastic bag. You also have to comply with the polystyrene and the straw portion, but
yes.
the paper is only for larger grocery stores.
Okay, very good. Very good to understand. That helps a lot. I didn't understand that, so that's very good.
All right, John, thank you so much. Next, we have Evan with Walmart. Hi, Evan. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. Thanks, everyone, for your comments. I just wanted to mostly reiterate what Jason Wadsworth and Linda Doherty had brought up. I wanted to mention Walmart is part of a Beyond the Bag initiative. We have a consortium along with CVS and Target, and we've been working hard on trying to, problem solve how to remove bags. We've gone bagless in a number of states, but again, to the comments that Jason and Linda brought up, most of those are for in-store and for grocery pickup, which I think are a little bit easier to think through. And reiterating a little bit about what John was saying, although maybe not applicable to his world of smaller retailers, delivery really does pose a whole new challenge that I don't believe today there are any viable sustainability options for. So I actually piloted in New York and New Jersey over the past 6 months a reusable bag model for delivery. That was particular to a delivery type that Walmart offers. It's a small section of it. It's called in-home delivery, where we actually own that entire chain. So the vehicles and the drivers are, belong to Walmart or Walmart employees. As soon as we expand outside of that, to the points made earlier, to the DoorDashes and Instacarts, it really is not super feasible at this point. We do have a pilot plan to start investigating what that would look like. But again, we haven't really done any meaningful sustainability analysis in terms of what the reverse logistics look like, what's the percent bag loss. So if we're only getting 75% of those bags back, and I say only 75%, does not make it worthwhile from a sustainability standpoint. And then there's the sustainability costs of reverse logistics, getting those bags to a cleaner, and then the actual cleaning of them. So I think this is all, I think this is a very important conversation. We want to be moving this forward. I do worry that we're going to end up in New Jersey in a similar situation to what happened in Connecticut, which is we moved from 0.8 millimeter bags to 4 millimeter bags in order to meet the requirements of that state. And then the problem just became simply 5 times worse from both a cost standpoint and from an environmental standpoint. So I think if we don't really have viable options, and I am speaking specifically to delivery, I just wanted to echo Jason and Linda's comments that we're going to end up in a much worse situation. And I think maybe together as a group, we should outline what the options are, what the alternatives are, what those impacts would be, and if we are actually achieving the goals that we all have in common here, which is to reduce waste and make a viable option for the future.
Thank you, Judy. If you don't mind, I'm going to make just 2 quick comments.
Sure.
The first one, I just wanted to know, I know you had brought up the thicker plastic bags in Connecticut. So that is something that wouldn't happen in New Jersey because based on the way the law is written, the thicker plastic bags would not be allowable because they don't meet our definition of a reusable bag. So I just wanted to help your concerns there. But my second one is...
Sorry, just to comment on that. I mean, to have a bag that meets the requirements of New Jersey's law would be a lot more plastic than a single-use plastic bag.
True. That is true. The reusable bags tend to be made with more plastic, but because they are reused multiple times, similar to like other products like dinnerware at homes instead of paper plates at first, it's definitely heavier, but the more you reuse it, the more worth it I think it becomes on an environmental standpoint.
Right, but the issue again just is from a delivery standpoint, there is no option to reuse it.
Yes. So speaking of that, Judy, I want to actually move on to the next question because we've sort of already started covering it.
I was going to ask if you wanted to switch to the next slide because I have a feeling we were going in the same direction too.
Yes.
Let's go for it, and then we'll pick up with all of you that have your hands raised from the order in which you raised them.
Yes. So the next question, which we sort of already started covering, is how will the single-use plastic and paper bag ban affect your e-commerce and or delivery service businesses? So we have already gotten some comments, but now let's maybe jump back into the line of questions, Judy.
Okay. We're going to go to Jason Wadsworth.
Yeah, I won't repeat all of what I said just because you changed the slide. So I just had a clarifying question. You mentioned before that restaurants are exempt from this. Grocery stores that operate a meal delivery service out of what we consider to be our restaurant within the store, we understand that that's also exempt. Can you clarify that?
So it comes down to the
paper bags.
Yeah, it comes down to the business type, but so you would still be considered a grocery store even though a part of your building or your service includes food options for takeout. Your store is still a grocery store, so you would have to comply based on the definition of a grocery store. So you wouldn't be able to provide the paper bags.
Okay, that was not our understanding.
Do you have any more details about?
I guess I would turn that over to Linda. Linda, was that your understanding as well?
Linda, you can go ahead.
Can I jump in? Yes.
Yes, because then we're going to go back to Tim after the conversation with Jason and you.
Yes. Packaged or prepared foods, Erin, the way we read the definition, are exempt and they could be wrapped in or use the use of a paper bag. If you go back and look into those definitions, that is our interpretation.
The specific exemption for, let me bring up my definition here. A bag used solely to contain food sliced or prepared to order is typical to your bags that you see at a deli counter, the sliced meats and cheeses, and usually they have a selection of cold foods like macaroni salad, potato salad, that kind of stuff. Those are the types of smaller bags that this exemption includes. And whereas it says including soups or hot food, that is describing those kind of small, almost square plastic bags, for example, that you may see at like a Wawa, or if you order a container of soup that they place it in, it typically has like a cardboard type base to it or a paper base to keep it sturdy. Those are the bags described in this area. But
Right.
we can definitely take in everyone's opinion with rules. I mean, we cannot change anything that is written, but we can clarify things. So we definitely want to keep getting your opinions on that.
Right.
So this is Jason again, just real quick. So we make the delineation of if you're contracting with a DoorDash who is also servicing restaurants, that is a restaurant food. We're not sending groceries out with DoorDash. We're sending restaurant foods out with DoorDash and using Pipard to do so, whereas we're using Instacart for groceries. Instacart is not providing restaurant food to customers, they're providing groceries. So to me, and maybe Wegmans is unique, I don't think so, but we're a restaurant within a grocery store, if that makes sense.
So is it two separate businesses, or is it the same business?
Two separate businesses under one roof is how I would describe it.
So similar to like if you went into, like, for example, one of my ShopRites, you can go in and there's also a Dunkin' Donuts inside, but it's its own thing. It's just part of the store. Is it something like that?
I would say akin to that, but again, I would make the delineation there with the service provider that we're using. DoorDash is a restaurant service provider. Instacart is a grocery service provider. And so they're two very different models. And, you know, we are competing with restaurants using DoorDash. So you're penalizing our restaurant business just because we're under the roof of a grocery store, if that makes sense.
I understand your concerns, and we're definitely, again, the point of the meeting is to take in everyone's comments and thoughts, and when we're considering the rules that we want to write. So we're going to keep doing that.
I think it's an interesting point that although, you know, you can take DoorDash and Instacart and group them into e-commerce, would it be worth splitting that hair into e-commerce grocery versus e-commerce retail? You know, or e-commerce like restaurant versus grocery. I mean, I think that's something that we'll definitely have to think about. I think that's a great point that Jason and Linda, you both brought up. We're definitely going to take that under advisement.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. And I just one last point is I think we definitely want to take that under advisement, and it's an interesting thought, Judy, versus the grocery versus the food delivery services. I think it can get a little bit dicey because all these businesses are expanding, as Linda has said. It's a big thing. So now your DoorDash, which used to typically be food, now does pickups from Bed Bath and Beyond. So they're expanding outside of their typical. So the splitting hairs may be even more complicated now. But just to give everyone an idea of, like, this is what we are considering all of this with rules because we want to specify everything as best as possible.
We'll be going down all of those rabbit holes through the stakeholder process.
Yes.
Rest assured. Actually, at this point, I'd like to move on to Timothy Ayers. He's been sitting and waiting patiently for the last couple minutes. And then next in line after him will be Linda Doherty. So, Timothy, welcome. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
So I had two questions. Well, actually, one question and one point. How does the law affect a facility? I'm from Six Flags, so we have retail and food service all under one large property. Would each business be judged individually, or would it be based on the total property size? Because different laws affect us in different ways here at the park. So some affect us individually by business, and other ones affect us on the park's overall size.
That's actually a very interesting question. I don't know if that has been brought up before. So we will have to think about that and probably discuss our thoughts in a future stakeholder meeting.
Erin, can I just jump in? Sorry,
I
didn't raise my hand. I'm sorry, Judy.
That's okay.
Do you have a recommendation for the department on how we should proceed or what we should consider? At this point, if you don't have an idea right now, that's fine. You could certainly email us, like, how your ideas on how we should apply these situations and incorporate them into the rules. We would love to hear, like, how you think we should consider how we should consider these topics to implement them in the rules.
Okay.
Jill has a great point, especially because a lot of you are bringing up focuses that we haven't had yet. And please do feel free to send us emails, to send us a white paper. Dare I say those two words together? But send us your ideas and basically what you're dealing with out there on the front line. Because with the changing community and retail market, things may be going on that we're not even sure of, and you guys are bringing it all to light to us. So again, please send us that information. We'd love to hear it. Jill, great point.
And then my second concern, and this is to back up what Jason is saying, as a third-party deliverer, I work with Grubhub and DoorDash on the side. It is going to create some chaos from that particular side. Now, I do it just every once in a while for a little bit of extra money on the side, but for the people that do it all the time, I can definitely see the concerns that they're bringing up.
All right, Timothy, thank you so much. We appreciate your input. Next, we'll have Mary Ellen. Welcome back.
Hi, Judy, again, thank you. This was to the earlier discussion we were having a few minutes ago about the restaurant type foods. It was our understanding that that section of the bill that references carryout bags and carryout bags shall not include, and then it goes through those iterations, that wasn't, that wasn't about what type of business you were, like whether you were a grocery store versus a regular retail versus, a restaurant, but that it had to do with the type of foods. So it was our understanding when this bill was going through the legislative process, and then when we started working on the implementation, that meant that all prepared foods, hot foods, food sliced, prepared to order, that was our understanding, that meant that those types of foods themselves which would be, restaurant type foods, and which some of our members do have in their cafes, that it was about the type of food that was exempt from those provisions, not whether or not you're a grocery store. Because I think when we had talked about a lot of those types of exclusions during the legislative process, a lot of that was for food safety, or for safety in terms of hot foods, hot soup spilling, things like that. And so that was the purpose of being able to make sure that you still had some, many options for those types of foods. So yeah, we would definitely want to, continue these conversations on that. I think Jason said that was our understanding, and that's what we have shared with our members, that those restaurant type foods that are specifically listed there would be, provided you're not, you can't take your, we understand you can't take your gallon of milk and stick that in that bag. Like, we understand that it's just for those restaurant type foods. So thank you.
Thank you. I think you are correct in your assumption. So the exemptions is for the bag type itself, not specifically the food itself. So those bags used at deli counters or for those smaller hot food individual items are exempted, whereas I think before we got into a little bit more of a carryout situation, like the paper bag portion is more of a carryout bag. So I think that's sort of where the delineation comes, but we're definitely going to discuss making that clear, specifically this exemption in rules.
All right, I'd like to toss to Jill.
If you have any suggestions or recommendations on how the department could clarify that when we undertake rulemaking, so that there is no misunderstanding as to what's exempt and what is not, we would love to hear your feedback on that. Again, you don't have to answer it right now, but you could email us. Certainly, we would like those ideas.
Indeed. All right. Mary Ellen, do you have anything further right now?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, thank you so much. We'll I think we'll look to provide you clarifying language. Thanks so much.
That would be great. Thank you. Next, we have Linda Doherty.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to make one more comment that came up earlier about the cardboard boxes as an alternative for delivery. When you're comparing a liquor store to a major supermarket, when we may have over hundreds, or now during the busy holiday, 1,000 online orders in a day in one grocery store. Just think about the viability right now of all those boxes, if that was the alternative. And also look at our, freezers when you put food aside, when you've done your shopping for the grocer, where you going to put boxes, those cardboard boxes in a freezer or a refrigerator, as you hold them before they go out to the customer. So just the magnitude of what we're talking about when it comes to cardboard is just not a feasible option. So I just want to make that comment.
So really, it's not just the material that would be an issue, it would be the volume of the material used for transport. Okay.
Sure.
Just wanted to make sure that we were on the same line. Thank you very much, Linda. Next we have up Carrie Martin from Clean Ocean Action. Good afternoon, Carrie.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Carrie Martin, Clean Ocean Action Advocacy Campaign Manager. Just wanted to, raise up and second what John Weber had said earlier from Surfrider on the multiple good points he made regarding the importance of this law and how, it can be done with some ingenuity and some creativity and the stakeholder process. We just wanted to also make sure that, this bill went through quite a bit of, back and forth, obviously, and consideration from multiple stakeholders in the process. And, it's past time to have this type of law because of the impacts we're seeing from the litter that come from many of these types of, that's being, banned and regulated. So, as we've seen on our beach cleanups twice a year over 37 years of history, it's important to address the sources of these pieces of litter, like the plastic bags and so forth. So we just wanted to make sure that this law doesn't get pushed back in terms of becoming into effect. Obviously, coming up with solutions that are doable is important, but there are other states, implementing such laws around the country. And I just had a specific question. I'm sorry, I might have missed it in the beginning, but will you identify the specific areas or things that require rulemaking, or is it, or is that what's going to come out of the stakeholder process?
I think that's was going to be evolving from the stakeholder process, because there's parts of the statute that are going to need clarification. So we would be putting that information into rule. But in our general stakeholder process, we like to get the information from you guys about how you're trying to implement the law while we don't have rules yet. But then we take it to the next step where we talk about concepts of, do you think we're going to need this particular idea or this restriction or this clarification in the rule? So that's something that we'll be discussing with you throughout this whole process. And again, this is just our first meeting. We will be going on to probably more in-depth issues and questions, because we're going to have questions as we go along too. So as long as we have that back and forth, we're probably going to be going down a lot of different rabbit holes, which will help us determine what it will eventually be put into the rule proposal. I hope that answers your question.
So I was just wondering, do you foresee the stakeholder process and the rulemaking process to end and be completed before the May 4th, date that it becomes effective?
The rulemaking process will keep going, because in fact, we need to sit down, formulate the rule, and talk to the stakeholders to find out what would be best to put within that rule text. Then it has to be proposed in the New Jersey Register. After that, there would be a 60-day comment period for public comment, most likely also have a public hearing during that time. And then within a year of the publication of the proposal, that's when the rule would be adopted. So because we're probably not going to be having an effective rule as of the May 4th date, it's still going to be in process. We're going to be working within the confines of what the statute is spelling out. And when it comes to the interpretation of the statute, that's basically up to all the different parties. However you interpret the statute, it's up to your specific interpretation until we have our rules in place. So what we're hoping to do is, throughout the stakeholder process, get your ideas and interpretations and feelings about the statute and maybe meld all of those ideas together into a workable rule that not only benefits the regulated community, but also protects the environment and stays true to the intent of the statute.
So, sorry, I just wanted, that was a lot of information. So the law becomes effective on May 4th, but the rulemaking will continue and go through the process that you just laid out. So after May 4th, everyone needs to be complying, but based on how they read the law and not necessarily how it will be, will it be enforced?
I'm going to toss that question back to maybe Sonia or Erin.
Sonia, do you have any? I guess I can go first. It's still an effective date, even if there's no rules, the law still becomes effective and compliance is expected. So enforcement can and most likely will still happen after May 4th. And that'll look different depending on where you are. But again, that's something we'll specify more through the rule process about exact details, but the general nature of the law, everything still becomes effective on the day and you need to comply. If you have specific questions about how to comply, that's kind of, we do general guidance for now until rules are finalized, if that sounds correct, Judy. The FAQs, yes. And more FAQs will be coming soon. I don't have an exact time, but they will be coming soon.
Thank you, Erin. This is Sonia with Compliance and Enforcement. You basically covered my response similarly. The department has the authority through the statute, as well as the county agencies and local governments to enforce the provisions of the statute. The rules, just when adopted, outline the more formal process the department typically follows. But the authority will remain there with the effective date of the law.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, I know, I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions, but is this typical that rulemaking happens after an effective date? I'm sorry, does it differ? Or, I mean, I'm so sorry, it just seems like that stuff should be done before.
You would think, but it's in the normal course of things.
Rules are more there to clarify any possible vague points in a statute. So we're not making any additional additional things on top of the law. We're just there to clarify what's in it. So I think it is typically a normal process. Rules is a long process.
I also think having some time to implement the law and get an even greater understanding of what the challenges are will help inform us so that we can draft better rules for you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Kari. Next up is Evan from Walmart.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again. Just following up on Carrie's point about other states or jurisdictions having similar laws, I was curious, just for my own knowledge, are there any other places that have a similar ban on the delivery side that we can look to for inspiration and solutions? Or is it this group's understanding that this is kind of the most austere law on the delivery side?
I'm not sure if any of the other bag bans specifically ban from delivery or not, or I think delivery just kind of gets put together with commerce in general. So there's in-person retail and e-commerce, but if you ban it from retail, it really bans it from everywhere. I don't think there's any specific delivery bans.
Okay, thanks.
All right, do we have any further questions, comments on the e-commerce issue? Okay, I think we may have exhausted that for now. Erin, do you want to move? Oh, wait, we have Mary Ellen.
Yes, hi, I'm sorry, just one more question that I think you are still thinking about, but would love to know if sort of clarification has been reached. We are also trying to get some clarification for our members on the sort of the cross-border online sale and delivery issue. Regarding interstate sales, and when, if a customer in New Jersey has an order and maybe it's packed at a fulfillment center across the river, and so we're trying to get some answers on that. That's something that our multi-state members have been asking about. Thank you.
I
Thanks,
believe
Mary
that
Ellen.
is still under discussion on our side and review, legal-wise.
I think we're still waiting for advice from our attorneys.
Okay, thanks so much.
Sure. Any further questions, comments, concerns? Okay, Erin, I think we can bounce back to you in the next one. Yep.
Thank you, Judy. All right. So now we are going to change topics a little bit, and we are going to move on to a discussion on polystyrene foam food service products. So I'm going to start with the definition from the law is that a polystyrene foam food service product is defined as a product made in whole or in part of polystyrene foam that is used for selling or providing a food or beverage and includes but is not limited to a food container, plate, hot or cold beverage cup, meat or vegetable tray, cutlery, or egg carton. This section of the law also has exemptions. However, these exemptions are only valid for a period of 2 years after the implementation date. So that would be until May 4th of 2024. These temporary exemptions include long-handled polystyrene foam soda spoons when required and used for thick drinks, portion cups of 2 ounces or less if used for hot foods or foods requiring lids, meat and fish trays for raw or butchered meat, including poultry or fish that is sold from a refrigerator or similar retail appliance. Any food product prepackaged by the manufacturer with a polystyrene foam food service product. And again, the department does have the ability through rule, guidance, or regulation to add additional similar polystyrene foam food service products to this list. So our next topic of discussion is going to be what alternatives to polystyrene foam food service products are you considering? What's out there, what's available, what works for your business, or just what are you considering in general?
All right, we are open for questions. Please raise your hand if you'd like to provide a comment. Okay, we don't see any hands yet, but thinking about just from a consumer perspective, polystyrene foam food service products, I've started seeing when I'm going out to like different restaurants, every once in a while, I'll be getting black plastic containers for to-go orders or for like the little doggy bag. Sometimes you'll just get the paper containers that might be wax lined. I've also seen the clear plastic lightweight containers. There's still some parts, at least over in Pennsylvania, that still have the foam service containers. But are there any other ones that we may be missing?
I know a lot of businesses over the last 2 to 3 years have really already started going away from the polystyrene foam. You'll see things like at the Dunkin' Donuts or other coffee shops. They no longer use these products.
They use the wax paper cups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to know if there, like you said, is there something we're missing that we're not seeing that's out there?
Or is there an alternative that on behalf of your affiliation that you would like to see more prolific use of? Or are there cost issues when you're dealing with different alternatives? Are there any alternative materials that you might be aware of that you're not looking to use because they might be causing more of a cost problem, affecting the bottom line? We have Maura Toomey. Welcome, Maura. Good afternoon.
Hi, this is Maura Toomey from Clean Water Action. On this topic, I wanted to bring up a concern that we have, which is that, with a lot of these paper alternatives, a lot of them are treated with PFAS or other harmful, forever chemicals that are an emerging issue. And I know that the law doesn't specifically address this, but I was wondering if there is any way that, recommendations can be made for, preference for products that are free from PFAS and other toxic, forever chemicals.
I would think that we'd love to hear your concerns. We'd like you to email us those issues because that's something that this is just consumer duty that I hadn't even thought of. Well, I know that like they say that like PFAS and those forever chemicals are basically in and around everyone and everything, but I hadn't thought about it from the food packaging side.
They're very common on those materials because, that's to help them be a little more water resistant and more durable. So it's actually, those are some of the products where it's very common on. Obviously, we're happy that polystyrene foam is eliminated because that's also toxic, but we don't want to be, just replacing one with another. We want to be able to give folks and businesses, an actual real alternative. So yeah, I can send you some more information on that if that's more helpful.
That would be great. I'm sure that's something that we'll be talking about in future stakeholder meetings too. At the end of this presentation, I think our general email address is going to be up where you'll be able to send all that information. But that's a good point. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just want to point out there is a resource online through the New Jersey Business Action Center called the Vendor Clearinghouse, where businesses who sell products that are alternative to the ones being banned can apply to be added to the list. As a department, we don't make it specific recommendations for product types, though we are very concerned, obviously, with food safety, and we can put things like guidance on that website. So anything that you provide for us, we can use for guidance to, educate people as long as we won't be saying, hey, you should buy this specific product, something like that. But it would definitely be helpful for guidance on that type of website.
All right, thank you, Erin. Next up is Kari Martin.
Just a quick follow-up. Erin, could you tell me the name of that website again? I'm sorry.
Sure. So it's the New Jersey Business Action Center. And then they have a vendor clearinghouse. So on their page, you just go to their bag ban resource page, and there'll be information on viewing the clearinghouse and also for businesses to apply to be on it.
Is there any way someone from DEP staff can get that information to Tyrone and he can post it in the chat?
And then I also had a suggested resource as well. Have you checked out the Blue Standard by Oceanic Global? They too also have a blue list, for vendors for sustainable materials. I think even sometimes they have coupon codes for some of those products.
Wow.
So as a business, you could check out there, but also for DEP for consideration for suggestions for moving forward. I think they go through a process to identify the best alternatives.
Yeah, please make sure to include that when you reach out with the further information on the alternative safety products.
And Chris, thanks for posting it in the chat. The link is up there. All right, I think we can move on to our next commenter, NJDEP. I think I pronounced that right, from NJDEP.
Yes, you did. Hi.
All right, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm with the Dini Checo with the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. And, as a consumer, I went to a local Thai restaurant in town, small one, and they were giving out foam, and I made a comment to them that's going to be ending May 4th, and they said, we know, but we don't know what to do. what it is, an alternative that is sustainable and economically feasible for these small, very small restaurateurs that are trying to do the right thing. And that's definitely a concern. I hear that, with alternatives, folks are offering plastic containers, and now we're just creating another stream. And that's concerning to me as well of waste. So what I'd love to do is see if there's a way to push for reusables. That would be ideal. There's a lot of work being done in California, and I'd love New Jersey to encourage a reusable marketplace for alternatives.
On the issue of reusables, I think correct me if I'm wrong. I've been seeing some commercials with like reusable, whether it's aluminum mugs that I don't know if it might be for your smaller mom and pop coffee shops that are starting to introduce that. I haven't seen any in New Jersey yet, but I'm starting to see ads for them on TV, and just the fact that they're out there promoting that type of thing, I think that's a really great idea. And thank you for bringing that up. If there is any information that you might know of that you'd be able to let us know, whether it's different web links or how that is seen through like the small business community, please send it to our email address because we'd love to have that information too.
Sure. Just to add on to that, I think what would help in order to ease concerns, Vermont recently did this where I think their Department of Health put out a statement, and they have a process involved as well where reusables are safe. And that's going to go a long way to alleviate any concerns that businesses have about using reusables.
And I believe we do have a representative from the Department of Health for New Jersey on the call, if I'm not mistaken. So that would I would definitely recommend getting in touch with them if that's something you were interested in working on with them on.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share that information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. Next up is Mary Ellen.
Yeah, hi, thank you. You just sort of talked about what I was going to say, but we have to be really careful and cautious when we're talking about reusable containers for food safety purposes, for allergen cross-contamination. There might be some circumstances where it might be okay for somebody to, refill their own cup. But I think when we're talking about something where we're going to be handing an employee a container that we've brought in from our home. I know members have discussed this issue in the past, and while, certainly I think from an environmental standpoint, you can certainly see the appeal. There's concern about cross-contamination. Now the employee has taken that container, brought it into the back to fill the food. There's a lot of food safety concerns that would need to be addressed. So thank you.
Thank you much, Mary Ellen.
Thanks.
Do we have any additional questions, concerns for polystyrene alternatives? John Hepner, how are you this afternoon?
Quite well. The only thing I was going to throw out, it's kind of I saw it on TV the other day, but that's the edible cutlery, if you've seen that. It's a new thing, I think kind of new, but where you can actually eat your spoon when you're finished. Just something to think about. I don't know how well it is, but if you Google search edible cutlery, you'll see what I'm talking about. Kind of an interesting concept.
Wow.
Yeah, it was on Shark Tank. So
talk about no waste. Jeez.
That's my point. So, yeah. But it's out there. It is out there. They're a business. They're starting up. I'm not trying to promote anybody at all because I get nothing out of this, but just something to, it may be the future, who knows, I don't know, but just throwing it out there.
I'm gonna have to keep an eye out for that. That sounds kind of neat. But then it's like in speaking of that, I keep thinking about, remember decades ago when you would get your little ice cream cups and you'd have that wooden spoon? Of course, the ice cream is in a plastic cup, but you have the wooden spoon, and in theory, you should be able to recycle that. I don't know how far we've come from that, but
Yeah,
I'm sure there's more innovations. Being able to eat your spoon, that's different.
Yes. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what they taste like. I'm not sure I want to eat the spoon, but nonetheless, it's there. Just a thought.
Dana?
I was just going to say the sugar spoon and fun dip was always a good time. Yeah, no. But this is great. It's such, like, we have everybody here engaged in this conversation. There's so much information that we are gathering. There's so much that we know. There's a lot that we don't know, and I really appreciate everybody's comments. Thank you.
All right, John, do you have anything further at this time?
Nothing for me. I'm sorry.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Just wanted
No
to make
problem.
sure we got everything there. Next up is Timothy Ayers.
Just going off what John just said about the edible spoons, we actually did get samples of those. And while some flavors are good and other flavors are not, they actually come pre-wrapped in plastic. So it ends up creating more litter that way, at least in our setting, than it does provide a common good.
Well, wasn't it? I think it was that Dustin Hoffman movie back in the 70s where the future is plastics. Who knew? Do we have any further comments on the alternative discussion? Timothy, do you have anything further?
Not at this time.
Okay. John Weber.
Hi,
you have the floor.
John Weber again from Surfrider Foundation. I'll get this to the right person at DEP, but Surfrider Foundation has an ocean-friendly foodware guide, and it just goes through the, where restaurants normally use this, they can use this, and here's where you get it, and here's what it costs, and here's how much money you're going to save, or whatever, things like that. So we did this because we have a program called Ocean Friendly Restaurants, where they're not using plastic and they're not using styrofoam, and regardless of state laws or whatever. And there's 750 of them across the country, and they're serving, tens of thousands of, if not more, plastic-free meals every day. Probably more like hundreds of thousands of meals, I guess. Anyway, I'll get it to the right person at DEP. Just let me know if the email goes in the chat. I'll email it to that person.
That would be great. Whether we put a specific person in the email or if you can send it to our general plastics email address that will be on the last slide today. Thank you so much. Oh, Dana just put it in the chat at the reduce food waste.
I put the wrong one in. I'm going to put the right one in a second.
Okay, so stay tuned to your
Food waste was
chat.
this morning, Dana.
Stay tuned to your chat, so that should be posted shortly. John, do you have any other comments, questions?
No, that's it for now. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Do any of you have any additional information or subjects that you'd like to talk about with alternatives to polystyrene? If not, I'll give it another couple seconds to see if any of you need to raise your hands. Because, there we go, single-use plastics at dep.nj.gov. Dana just posted it in the chat. Thank you, Dana. We don't have any more hands raised for this particular topic. I think we might be able to move on to the next one. Erin, back to you.
Great, thank you, Judy. So our next discussion, I'm going to go over a little bit of the waiver process. So on top of having some temporary exemptions, polystyrene foam also has a waiver option. This waiver is live on our website, and you can apply for a waiver at any time. Waivers are good for a period of 1 year, and then you would need to apply annually if you continue to meet the parameters. So to be considered for a waiver, you would have to meet one of these two situations. The first is there is no feasible and commercially available alternative for a specific polystyrene foam food service product, or the person or business has less than $500,000 in gross annual income, and there is no reasonably affordable, commercially available alternative to polystyrene foam food service product. Just to mention that this waiver is not for a business as a whole, but the waivers are for specific products, as you can see here. So if a business is going to submit a waiver because they meet the situations for multiple products, they would need to submit several waivers for the different product types they'll plan on using, or they plan on continuing to use. So going on to the question, what guidance would you like to see regarding environmentally sound polystyrene foam food service alternatives? So that has to do with this law, but also the general discussion we've posted as part of the law. So as part of the law, the Department of State, in consultation with the Department of Environmental Protection, is charged with establishing a program to assist businesses in complying with the provisions of the law. This includes establishing an online clearinghouse of vendors who provide environmentally sound alternatives to single-use plastic carryout bags, single-use paper carryout bags, polystyrene foam food service products, and single-use plastic straws. So as you can see, it says environmentally sound. We want to put some more guidance out there of what that means. And this goes along with the vendor clearinghouse that I did mention earlier that is hosted by the New Jersey Business Action Center, which is a part of the Department of State. So between that and the information in the waiver section, what guidance do you want from us regarding environmentally sound alternatives to polystyrene foam products?
And first, just a note, Tyrone has put in the chat that link for the bag ban waiver and cover letter forms. So if you would like to copy that link or have direct access to that to be able to see the form now within our discussion, you can just go into the chat function and click on that link. Thanks, Tyrone. First up, we have Mary Ellen.
Thank you. Again, just one quick question about the waiver process. I do understand that it's a per product waiver that you would have, so you might have to submit multiples. Is that, when it comes to sizes, if you have the exact same product and say like 3 different sizes, can you submit one application for that, or do those have to be 3 different applications?
That's a good question that we could, again, we could use as guidance for the waiver. At the moment, I'm going to say if they're just different sizes, it would be one waiver. But based on our discussions, that could change. But that's what my initial thought is on that.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mary Ellen. Do any of you have additional questions or comments about what kind of guidance you would like to see regarding alternatives? And I know we've discussed that in a couple points already. If there are some that we've discussed, I think it was the Blue Ocean with the links for that information. Please feel free to post that in the chat so we could access that, and or email it to us at our general email address that we'll be talking about, that's also listed in the chat and also will be on one of our last slides. Anyone else? Dee Checo, welcome back. You're muted.
Sorry.
There you go.
Okay. Along with the guidance, Maura talked about PFAS alternatives. I discussed, having an alternative that's not creating more recyclables, or certainly black plastics cannot be recycled, so that's a concern as well. And oh gosh, what was I going to talk about? Darn it, I'm blanking.
Okay, it's okay.
Whoa, what was my other item? So I'd like to see guidance along those lines, and
reference lists.
Reference lists are definitely. I think that would be really helpful. Yeah, along those lines. Yeah, that would be great.
Did you have any question about the waiver?
No, I don't have a question on the waiver.
I was just trying to cue in your memory if there was something else that you might have missed.
Well, I appreciate that.
Sure.
But just more from what's acceptable for recycled materials, and just trying to encourage folks to use foil, perhaps, go back to wax and foil.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Anyone just, to grab some more attention on this specific topic. So one of our considerations is working through the vendor clearinghouses, putting in guidance saying, here's a bunch of people that say they have alternatives to polystyrene, and based on the law, anything that's not polystyrene is allowable. But we want to give people more information saying maybe this type of product is more environmentally friendly than another type. So comments like that, maybe thoughts about what may be better than others, would also be great in this discussion. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank Kari and John for putting in links for Blue Standard as well as the Ocean Friendly Foodware Guide. Thank you for that information. Do we have any other questions, concerns for this particular subject? I'm not seeing any more hands. I think we might want to move on to the next one. Erin, back to you.
All right. Let me bring up our next question here. So we are going to change topics and we are going to move on to discussing straws. So our first topic of discussion is we don't have a definition for straw in the statute. So we are considering creating a definition for that in the rules. I want to get your opinion on how would you define a straw?
Okay, let me see if I can. There's your common thing of you get a straw in a drink, right? But you have, like, remember back in the day there were the big McDonald's straws that would be served with their shakes. If you go to a nightclub, you're getting the little stirring sticks that have holes in them. So are they a stirrer or are they a straw? You might have some type of a paper stick. Is there a hole in it? Is there not? If it's not particularly used as a straw, is it still considered a straw? We'd like to know what your ideas on those particular materials are.
Based on our slide here, the current interpretation we have of a straw is a tube of any thickness or length that one may suck through for any food product.
So I mean, there's some. If you think about it, you might go to your local coffee shop and you have a coffee stirrer or what is being marketed as a coffee stirrer, but it could be one of those the long sticks that have the dual holes, where really you could suck the coffee through it, or you could just use it as a stirrer. In-house, we've been discussing these kinds of things, and we need to know what all of you think about these types of materials. And I know it might just be pedestrian that, well, a straw's a straw, but there's a lot of things to consider. What it's made of, what size it is, where you get it, what it's being used for. So we'd like to have your input and your thoughts on that. And first, we're going to go with Jason. Welcome back.
So I guess then what I've read in the law is it's plastic that you're looking to ban, correct?
Yes, so the by request only rule is not quite a ban. It's just instead of automatically giving out straws, the customer has to request one, but that only applies to the single-use plastic straws. Other types of straws that are not plastic do not have to follow the upon request rule.
Answer my question. Thank you.
Maybe even let us know, does anyone agree with our interpretation? That would also be helpful.
And if you think we're going down a rabbit hole, I mean, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. Jason, do you have any further question?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay. Deanie Checo? Share your thoughts. You're muted.
Yep, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I was also looking for clarification. It was my understanding that a business has to have plastic straws available upon request.
Yes, the law states that food service businesses must have an adequate supply of single-use plastic straws on hand for the purpose of a customer requesting them. They have to have them available.
Okay, I think there's room for making that much better. I'm concerned about having a plastic straw available. So if you have a business that has migrated and has, paper straws or another product type, it doesn't, to me, make a lot of sense to encourage having a plastic on the side available to customers.
Thank you. I think it's important to know with rules, we can't change the way the law is written, but we can just clarify.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think is our plan, and we are working on some guidance in lieu of the rules at the moment for the straw provision as well, in hopes that maybe we can cover this issue.
Okay. Well, in that case, may I recommend that if it is a plastic straw, for it to be a flexible plastic straw up top, so it's bendable, and that could be more, that is more ADA compliant.
I remember back in the when the legislation was going through, there were many interested parties that were concerned about the flexible straws, and
Yes.
for that reason. And I know that at least I don't know if the last time I was in a hospital, we always called them the bendy straws.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that they would probably be the most effective, and it would be more for the intent of why that was included in the law. So we're aware of some of that background too. If there's any further information or insight that you have on it, we would love to hear more.
Okay, thank you, Judith.
All right, thank you much. Next up, we have John Weber. Welcome back.
Hey, John Weber, Surfrider Foundation. I think partial answer to Deanie's question is I think the reason that we left having a supply of plastic straws on hand in the law is for a person with a disability. In many cases, a paper straw is not going to do, and so for that reason, that exception was left. I do like Deanie's suggestion that they could just use a silicone straw, a reusable one, or something like that. But my concern here is that the business owners, I hope they don't say, well, I need to keep the supply of plastic straws because I don't know, everybody that comes in my business in the next 3 months might ask for a plastic straw. I think that would be abusing it, and not that, I think one box should be fine and it should last you 10 years. But if somebody walks in and has somebody with severe cerebral palsy that needs a plastic straw, that's just like how they drink, the place should be able to accommodate them, and I just want to make sure, let's make sure it doesn't get abused, and them keeping big supplies of plastic straws and then just giving them to everybody.
So your biggest concern would be that there's that reasonable accommodation from the ADA sense, but not an abuse of the use of plastic when paper would otherwise do for someone who is not disabled.
Yeah, I think that captures it. I mean, it almost sounds like the way that the law was just interpreted, that's it's almost like a mandate, like you have to keep a supply of plastic straws on hand for those exceptions. And I just want to emphasize, it would be for those exceptions when, it's really, really needed. I just think in general, most of these businesses that put a straw in every single drink, for the last 50 years, they're going to be like shocked and say, oh my gosh, we were wasting so much money on straws. Since we don't put a straw in every single drink, now we're saving so much money. So now we can afford to have these paper straws for when they are requested, or bamboo, whatever is more environmentally friendly on the breakdown side. But yeah, if they have to keep like one small box of plastic straws on hand, or like Deanie said, a reusable silicone straw, they have to accommodate somebody with a disability. I think that I think that's fair and that's fine, and that's why that exception's in the law.
And would you think maybe we need to define adequate supply in a rule? Is that something you think would be interesting to people to have that further defined?
I think it wouldn't hurt, but I'm not the regulated community. I understand. I just, let's face it, things get abused, and so maybe some clarity there would be good.
And if anyone else has thoughts on that as well, feel free to raise your hand.
John, thank you so much. Do you have anything further at this time?
Nope, thanks.
All right, thank you. Next up, Jason Wadsworth. Welcome back, Jason.
Hey folks, Jason Wadsworth, Wegmans Food Market. So we actually got rid of plastic stir sticks and plastic straws in our business. We still sell plastic straws, but that's the grocery center store area. One interesting thing, and we'd be interested in understanding what other alternatives for straws are out there, just as an interest. But one of the things we heard from customers is their concern on paper straws, since that's what we offer today, about gluten sensitivities. So I'm just putting that out there that we actually went through and got our certified gluten-free. So, but there's another alternative called a wheat straw. If you've seen or heard of that, I just don't know what the gluten issue is on those or any of the alternatives, quite frankly. So rambling, but I just thought that was an interesting point as I looked at alternatives that, paper straws suck.
Literally. Now,
Yeah.
well, Jason, thank you for your insight on that. If you can possibly email us or provide us with some of the research that you've done, or different web links for different materials, we'd find that very helpful.
And what are your thoughts on how we should further guide restaurants and food service businesses that have already gone plastic straw free in regards to having adequate supplies? What do you suggest for how we should handle those situations?
Next up is Kari Martin. Welcome back.
Hi, thank you. Clean Ocean Action. Just as you're talking about defining the straw, something to consider during our beach cleanups over these years. There are other things that are kind of like straws, but they're not used as straws. The stirrers that go along with coffee and other types of drinks, they're plastic. They actually have holes you could actually drink through, but you would get not much out of it. But that is really considered a straw. So I just want to make sure that whatever definition you choose. So I see here it says any thickness or length.
So you would consider that a straw?
I would, but people call it a stir, or for your coffee and stuff like that. So just someone may not interpret that though as a straw. You know what I mean? So if you put this in the guidance, they're like, well, that's not a straw because nobody sucks through it. But it's a problem we find on our beaches, and the way we code it in our data card is straws and stirs, because they're pretty much the same type of cylindrical type of item.
Thank you for that. Well, welcome to my life since this law has been passed.
Thanks.
Good stuff. Thank you. Next up is Cindy Zip from Clean Ocean Action.
Hi, good afternoon.
How are you?
Good. A very interesting afternoon of conversation. Cindy Zip from Clean Ocean Action. I just wanted to emphasize what John Weber from Surfrider was saying about, sort of people taking advantage of the upon request element. There's a lot of beverages that, require a straw, or are presented in a way that, you need to poke a straw through in order to drink it, and may lead people to, requesting that straw, which will just, perpetuate the huge amounts of straw usage that we're trying to reduce. It really was to accommodate folks with disabilities, to allow them to have access to a needed, tool for consuming beverages. So I just want to emphasize that, having food providers, have a product that, whereas anyone, has that straw access, and then the person says the straws aren't readily available, but they'll just automatically say, well, can I have a straw? So that it is upon request, but there's no emphasis on the reduction. So I don't know how that is being evaluated. But again, the purpose of the allowance was for folks with disabilities, and not to just let anyone, because they want to drink a beverage, request a straw. It's not the purpose.
I believe that.
Does that make sense?
No, I definitely get your concern. I think the way the law is written, because even though we know based on the comment periods of through the legislation that is the reasoning behind this exemption, it is written as a general statement. So you're not required to have a medical issue to request a straw. I don't know how we would limit that in a rule, but I'd love your suggestions.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that it's like a lot of these discussions that we're having with you, our regulated community, are similar to the questions that we've had in-house. And it's refreshing to see that you have the same concerns that we do. So I think that this exchange of information and ideas is really going to be helpful, because really you guys are going to be the ones using the rule, and we'd like to know what your viewpoints are on it. And the fact that you're having the same questions as us, it tells us, okay, it might be the statute, but we have to work together to see how we can bring the original intent of that law into regulation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mary Ellen.
Hello again.
Hope you
Erin,
don't mind that I'm doing this on a first name basis at this point.
I'm pretty sure we all know each other. Erin did sort of touch upon this, but I just do think that we have to keep in mind during this conversation, no, we don't want to have just as many straws as we've always had, but the issue for an employer, a business, a worker, you can't in any way ask or imply whether somebody has a disability or why they might need a straw. You can't just, if somebody says, I want a straw, you can't say, why do you need one? You can't say, you know what I mean? So I just think that that's something that we have to keep in mind. You cannot discourage someone if they say, I want a straw, because maybe they do have a disability that you can't see. So I just sort of want to, kind of put that out there to make sure we don't restrict what people can or cannot do or ask. I mean, right now, if anybody says, "I have a straw," you have to give them a straw, and that's the end of the, end of conversation. No further discussion or questions. Should that associate have? And then just, again, I think one of the questions and concerns that we've been getting in terms of customer service from our members is that in situations where it's not if somebody has made you a milkshake and now they don't give you a straw, but it's something where you are by yourself at a self-serve station. And if there is no readily available opportunity to have that straw, to ask for that straw because there's no employee there. And so that's one of the questions, and I know we've talked about with some of the folks in DEP so far, that we would have in terms of that self-service station and the opportunity to request or take a straw as needed. And so I gather those conversations are still happening, but just wanted to bring that into the discussion again.
Mary Ellen,
thank you.
That's your timing is impeccable, because it was like the perfect segue. Erin, I think we might want to move on to the next slide.
Thank you. I was thinking the exact same thing.
Perfect.
Which is, how is the request by only straw program working out in practice?
Yeah.
Erin, back to you.
So it has been just over a month since the implementation of the by request only regulation for the single-use plastic straws. And as we discussed earlier, rules sometimes are even better when we already know how it's being implemented and we can see the issues and use that to create the rules and make it better in the future. So we want to know in your areas, where you live, where you work, where you go, how is the by request only rule working out in practice?
Mary Ellen, you still had your hand up. Do you want to add a little bit more from the good segue that you gave us?
I'm sorry, I just forgot to go. I forgot to go off mute again. But no, I mean, thank you. I think I pretty much covered it. It's just a concern again about customer service and providing the opportunity to take a straw again, particularly in a circumstance where somebody does need a straw for medical reason, and you don't want to force them into a situation where now they have to kind of leave that station and go in search of a employee. Particularly as now you have more self-service, checkout and things like that. So thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Kari?
Yes,
you have the floor.
Again. Just so just some initial feedback from either just personal experience or professionally with people raising questions. And I have a question also. Was there any? I didn't see much outreach and education on this part of the law. I don't know if that was deliberate because of the timing of it, but for the pandemic and stuff like that. But I'm just thinking not many people heard about it from what I understand, and at least locally in Monmouth County here, through friends, family, and businesses that I go to. Some the diner that I know of, didn't put it in the bag, this time, which is good. So maybe some of it is getting out there. But I think one instance was at a movie theater with a high school student that was an employee and was not aware of the law and wasn't told. And unfortunately, someone got angry and they had to, get a superior there to clear up the situation. So I think there is, people, it's a behavioral thing. People are used to getting it, and there's no signage, there's no, outreach, I think, to make it known. I mean, it's in the papers, right? But I don't know how many people read newspapers anymore. I did see it, a lot on the bag, the plastic bag, a little prep work, at ShopRite, there's signs up at the checkout, but seen really nothing about straws, and it may be a small part to some, but it's a huge behavioral thing, unfortunately. I think it's doable. I just think it needs a lot more education, awareness, outreach. I will say, to the credit of my town, I was very happy to be at a council meeting the day that, on November 4th, the day that it became effective, that the business administrator announced it in minutes and to the council, which I thought was really great. And I don't know if that's happening across the state, but communication to the towns, so they announce it to their communities, is step one, for getting it out to communities and the businesses that are there. And I just think, from what I've heard and what I've seen, they're still being given out. People don't know about it. They may not get that upset, but, I know that the person at the movie theater was requesting like a handful, and they also then got confused. The employee got confused. Am I allowed to give one, or can I give multiple? It's not the amount, right, in the law. It's just to have them not readily available and upon request only. So there's a lot of confusion from what I've seen. I don't know if anybody else has a similar feedback.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think we have seen it's been a bit of a slow learning curve, in my opinion. We have been doing a lot of outreach through and with the Business Action Center, who is charged with the business education component of the law. We have met with many business associations. We have contacted all the chambers, the BIDs, the SIDs, the downtowns. We've sent letters to mayors. We have websites. We've done social media campaigns. Clean Communities has also has a Skip the Straw campaign. So there is information out there. And I have seen compliance at some of the larger places like the AMCs, Wawa, places like that. They have signs saying, if you want something, a straw, you have to ask for it. But you're right, and I think it needs to get even further, and that's something we're working on. But I'd love to get your suggestions on how to reach more people.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, of course, we are trying to educate others as well, and the people in our communities, in our circles. So it will come from many different places. I just hadn't personally seen an outreach specifically on the straw. I think I saw a couple of posts. So I just wanted to just put it out there that, with the bag law and the styrofoam, polystyrene, we need to also do the same sort of, if we want to make any indent whatsoever on reducing the straws, then we need to do more outreach.
It's a lot, and it's really a big cultural shift. I've got to say that just seeing what's going on in New Jersey and a few other states in that same wave, it's refreshing from an environmental protection standpoint that we're reaching this point where things are coming into law. And through stakeholdering and getting a chance to talk directly to our regulated community like yourselves, you guys are giving us the information that we need to be able to make it all work for everybody. Kari, do you have any further questions, comments? I see your
No,
hand's
I'll
still up.
lower my hand, sorry.
All right, no problem. Thank you very much. Maura, you're up.
Hi, yeah, this is Maura from Clean Water Action. Thank you for sharing about, what kind of outreach has been done so far, because that's, what I had wanted to ask about. And obviously it seems there's a lot more to be done. Clean Water Action is trying to do, more of that in the communities that we're involved with. But just like anecdotally, in terms of what I've been seeing since this part of the law is in effect, is similar. A lot of places, they just doesn't seem like anyone's aware, or there are a lot of places I've seen that are aware. It's just that they're switching to a paper straw or something else. There's no really indication that there's any by request policy happening, and I know that that's in compliance with the law, obviously. Paper, they could do whatever they want with, but I would just suggest that in outreach, it's communicated that what's the best practice overall is just adopting a by request policy across the board, because that's really, number one, in the true spirit of the law, which is reduction. Number two, doesn't add costs for businesses who are now feeling that they have to go ahead and purchase the more expensive alternative, while not seeing much of a reduction because people aren't aware of it yet.
So do you think that it's not just a material issue, which would be like plastic versus paper, but it's still just the volume is also an issue out there?
Yeah. So for example, Clean Water Action, a few years ago, we did a pilot project with a few restaurants where it was just a by request policy across the board. And we provided signage that just basically, it was very basic, had, just said, do you really need a straw? It's a little turtle picture that was cute. And then on the back, it had just some facts. And it was basically, this establishment only serves straws by request. So it didn't put it on the servers to have to communicate it or anything. It was visible to the customers, and it just kind of made them think, oh, okay, now I'm aware. I'm going to think about it. Do I really need a straw? I'll say yes, or, I'll decide yes or no for myself. But just doing that, in some of these restaurants that did participate, there was a huge reduction, like 90% reduction. So that's why I think a lot of it should be coming down to the outreach, because there really can be a lot of reduction seen in both paper and plastic. I know the law only applies to plastic, but the real, impacts that we're going to see are from overall reduction, embracing the by request, policy, and helping, educate people, or just making them more aware. That's, the new way.
Very thoughtful points. Thank you, Maura.
Thank you. And I think that is in mind. Also, as I mentioned a little bit ago, with New Jersey Clean Communities has a campaign currently for Skip the Straw. That's what the campaign is called. So it really focuses more on skipping the straw as a whole. So that's kind of in line with their campaign, and they have some stuff on their website, bagupnj.com, for more resources. And they have free signage for businesses to use in all different types for that. So I think that's in progress.
And just put in the chat, Joanne, thank you very much. The Skip the Straw social media campaign information. There's the link in the chat. Thank you so much for posting that in there for us. Does anyone have additional comments, questions, opinions regarding the straws? Okay, I don't see any more hands being raised. Erin, let's move on to the next slide.
All right. So this was actually our last slide based on material types, and we are going to move on to our closing remarks, which is going to start off with a poll question that we have kind of talked about earlier at the beginning of the presentation. So now that we've gone over all the questions for our first stakeholder meeting, we'd like to get an idea of what you would like to discuss further in future meetings. We plan on having multiple meetings throughout this process before actually writing rules and going through the formal process.
This is just the first step.
First step. So the poll question can be found via a link in the chat box once Tyrone posts it.
It's up there.
It's up.
Thanks,
Okay,
Tyrone.
so click on the link. There's going to be multiple options for you to choose, as well as another category if you'd like to add in additional thoughts that we didn't cover. They're very general topics, but specific to materials. So I'm going to give everyone about 2 minutes to go through and answer. You can choose multiple options, and then when you submit, that's your final time. You can edit them, but we only record your final response.
If there's something that's not on the list that you'd like to end up meeting with us about, please type that in too.
Yep, into the other category. And if you want to think about it some more, the poll will be open for 24 hours. So I'll give you guys about 2 minutes now to work on that.
So in the event that you're really not sure or you haven't had a lot of time to think about it, you can actually come back, click on the link to this Microsoft Teams meeting, go into the chat function, and you should be able to still access the poll question link, at least for the next day.
Okay, I think we're going to move on to our last slide in closing remarks, and I'm going to pass it on to Judy.
All right, thank you, Erin. On behalf of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and the Site Remediation and Waste Management Program, I would like to thank all of you for attending our stakeholder meeting today, the first of many I would expect at this point. Summaries of the topics that we covered at the meeting and basically any other additional relevant information will be made available following the meetings at the DEP's stakeholder website. I don't think it's on this particular slide, but it would be at www.nj.gov/DEP/workgroups/index.html. I would ask that someone on staff be able to put that in the chat. Following the New Jersey Register publication of the rule proposal, which we talked a little bit about early on, there would be a 60-day formal comment period and most likely a public hearing where formal comments, written comments can be made by anyone during that particular time. Lastly, we would ask that you direct your main questions via email. This is the big key. This is the big one we were talking about earlier this afternoon. It's at closing remarks number 1 at single-use-plastics@dep.nj.gov. We ask that you please send us information about your experiences with how the law has been implemented, what you think about what a straw is, and any other information that you think we should know about that you're dealing with on a daily basis, because we need to keep hearing from you. Again, I'd like to thank you all for spending your afternoon with us. On behalf of the department, I hope you have a wonderful day and a great week. Thanks.
Thanks, Judy.
Thanks, Judy.